The private dining room at Lasserk was full of laughter, clinking glasses, and the usual stories about my brother James's latest achievements. Another bonus, another promotion, another reason for my parents to look at him like he was the smartest person in the world. James Walker, the youngest vice president at Continental Bank, sat in the center of attention, dressed in an expensive suit, confident and proud. He was their shining star, and everyone at the table acted like his success was a gift to all of us. I sat at the corner of the table, quietly picking at my salad, mostly ignored. James raised his wine glass and spoke loudly. "The merger is basically done," he announced. "Once we finish acquiring that tech startup, Continental's digital banking will dominate the market." Dad smiled and nodded. "That's why you're ahead of the game, son, always thinking big." I said nothing, but I was thinking about the email I had received earlier that morning. It was labeled strictly confidential, not sent to the consulting firm my family thought I worked for, but to my actual company, the one none of them knew existed. Then Mom looked at me with that familiar mix of concern and judgment. "What about you, Sophia? Any progress with your, what do you call it again? Digital payment solutions?" I replied with a small smile. "Yes, we're doing well, we're growing." James chuckled and shook his head. "Growing? You're still working out of a WeWork, aren't you? That's not exactly impressive." I didn't bother correcting him. That WeWork office was just a mailing address. My real office took up 3 floors of a skyscraper in the financial district, but they didn't know that, not yet. "Not everyone needs a big office to prove something, James," I said calmly. He laughed again, sharp and mocking. "Keep dreaming, sis, while you're playing with your startup. I'm out here making real moves." If only he knew. He had no idea about the meetings I'd been having, no idea I'd been sitting down with the very board members he thought worked for him, no idea that the company making all those secret moves in the fintech world, Shadow Financial, was mine. And the next company we were buying? His. Continental Bank. Right now, as he bragged about his merger, he hadn't even noticed who was acquiring his company. Dad cleared his throat. "James mentioned Continental might have an entry-level tech job opening. Could be good for you, Sophia." "I'm good, Dad," I said, sipping my water. "Thanks though." James leaned in, smug. "You can't chase startup dreams forever. Eventually, you'll have to get a real job." The words didn't bother me, not anymore, because I knew something they didn't. My company had been quietly buying up regional banks for 3 years. We had kept our identity secret, but tomorrow, it would all come out. Tomorrow morning, when the markets opened, the world would learn that Shadow Financial was mine. And Continental Bank, that would officially become a part of my empire. James smirked and looked at his phone. "Saw your company website. Cute logo. Looks like just another payment app to me." Mom touched my hand. "No shame in needing help, honey. James could speak to someone at his office for you." I gave a small, polite smile. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm right where I need to be." James laughed out loud. "You're 32 and working from a shared office. I'm about to close the biggest deal in Continental's history. Big difference." I glanced at my watch. Just 15 hours left. 15 hours until he found out that the deal he was so proud of was really about him being bought by me. The waiter appeared. "Would you like more wine?" "Absolutely," James said. "Put it all on my card. Time to celebrate success, while my sister tries to figure out her life." He handed the waiter his Continental Bank executive credit card with a smug grin. A moment later, the waiter returned with a slightly confused expression. "I'm sorry, sir," he said quietly, "but your card has been declined." "What?" James snapped. "Run it again." "There appears to be a hold," the waiter explained, "due to some institutional changes at Continental." James looked shocked. "I'm a VP. There are no changes I don't know about." I gave the waiter my card instead, a sleek, matte black one with a small logo. His eyes widened when he saw it. "Of course, Miss Walker," he whispered. "I didn't realize. Your company just acquired his." I nodded slightly. "Yes, I know." James was still frowning at the waiter. "Don't worry, James," I said gently. "Dinner's on me." The next morning, I stood in my real office on the 52nd floor. It had floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that stretched from Manhattan to Brooklyn. I wore a sharp Armani blazer, very different from the casual outfits I wore to family dinners. This morning, I was ready to be seen. The screen on my wall showed financial news channels, all waiting for the big market announcement. My phone buzzed with messages. First from James, something weird happening at Continental, emergency board meeting, might be about the merger. Then from Dad, your brother is going to be on the news today. That's what happens when you work hard the right way. I smiled as my executive team walked in. My COO, Diana, handed me the final update. Press release goes live in 20 minutes. CNBC is ready for your interview. Continental's board signed the final deal an hour ago. Their executives haven't been informed yet. I nodded. Right now, James was probably sitting in a boardroom, still confident, still unaware, but soon, he'd learn that the emergency meeting was not about his merger. It was about his company becoming mine. Miss Walker, my assistant called through the intercom. I stood tall and smiled. Send them in. No more hiding. The world was about to know who I really was. The takeover, the intercom buzzed. Your brother's on the line, my assistant said. He says it's urgent. Not now, I replied calmly. We have more important things to deal with. At exactly 9:15 a.m., a red banner flashed across Bloomberg's live feed on the screen in front of me. Breaking, Shadow Financial acquires Continental Bank in $8.2 billion deal. And just like that, my phone blew up. James, what the hell? Shadow just bought us. Meeting starting now. Dad, are you seeing this? Your brother's bank is being bought out. Mom, please call. James won't answer. I didn't reply. I just looked up at the biggest screen in my office where CNBC's anchor was already covering the news. In a surprising move this morning, Shadow Financial has confirmed its acquisition of Continental Bank. But what's even more interesting is the identity of Shadow's CEO. Sophia Walker is finally stepping out of the shadows. Right then, my COO Diana rushed into the room. They're ready for your live interview. I stood up, straightened my blazer, and nodded as the camera crew made their final checks. The red light turned on. Joining us now is Sophia Walker, CEO of Shadow Financial, and now one of the youngest billionaires in the financial world. Miss Walker, you've made quite the entrance. I looked directly into the camera, knowing exactly who would be watching. Sometimes, the biggest moves happen in silence, I said. For 3 years, Shadow Financial has been changing the future of banking. Continental is just the next step. The interviewer leaned in. Sources say even Continental's own executives didn't know who was behind the deal. Was that intentional? We prefer to let our work speak for itself, I said smoothly. Names can create bias. Results, however, speak the truth. While I spoke, my phone kept buzzing, call after call from James. I could picture the boardroom at Continental, my brother trying to figure out how this happened under his nose. Then, another message from the front desk. Ms. Walker, Continental's VP of Digital Banking is in the lobby. He says he's your brother. I muted my phone and looked at my assistant. Let him up, and have security nearby, just in case. A few minutes later, the elevator doors opened, and James stormed into my office. He looked disheveled, still in yesterday's suit, his face a mix of shock and anger. He stopped short as he took in the scene, cameras, headlines on screens, the Shadow Financial logo behind my desk. What the hell is this? He said, breathless. Hello, James, I replied calmly. You're late for your board meeting. He stared around, confused. This is, how, your little app? I motioned to the screens, showing Shadow's stock climbing fast. It grew up. James collapsed into the nearest chair, overwhelmed. All this time, he whispered, when I kept telling you to get a real job. I had one, I said. In fact, I had several. Shadow Financial now owns 13 banks. Continental was number 13. He blinked. Do Mom and Dad know? They will, I said. I've arranged for a car to bring them to the press conference. He buried his face in his hands. What happens to me? I picked up a folder from my desk and handed it to him. The VP position is being restructured, but there's an opening in our innovation department. Smaller title, less pay, but it's a chance to rebuild from the ground up, the right way. He looked at me in disbelief. You're demoting your own brother? No, I said coldly. I'm offering a job to an underperforming executive. The fact that you're my brother doesn't change that. Just then, the intercom buzzed again. Your parents have arrived, Ms. Walker. They walked in moments later, their expressions stunned. My mom's eyes went wide. My dad looked around the office slowly, then stared at the wall of news coverage. Sophia, Mom whispered, "What is all this?" "This?" I said with a small smile. "This is what my little startup turned into." Diana stepped in again. "Press conference starts in 20 minutes. The board is seated." I turned to my family. "We need to talk fast. I have a company to run. Actually, several now." Dad finally found his voice. You bought Continental?" "Shadow Financial did," I replied, "and I own Shadow." James was still sitting in the chair, silent. "All those times I offered to help you," he said, more to himself than to me. "Told you to get a real job." "I remember," I said. "Like last Christmas, when you said I was wasting my time. I was finalizing the first Western deal, or last month, when you offered me an entry-level position, I was negotiating to buy your bank." My mother looked like she'd just been told the sky was green. "But your clothes, your apartment, that tiny office space, were exactly what you expected to see," I said. "The WeWork was a mail drop. I live in a penthouse, and this," I swept my hand around my office, "is where I actually work." Dad shook his head. "Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me?" Silence filled the room. I turned to James again. "So, have you decided? The innovation department is waiting." "You're really doing this?" he asked. "I'm offering a job to someone who may still have something to prove," I said. "Whether or not your family doesn't matter here. This is business." Mom gasped. "But we're family." "Exactly," I said, standing and walking toward the window. "And family should support each other, not dismiss their dreams as hobbies." The intercom buzzed again. 5 minutes to press. MS. Walker. I turned back to them. "You're welcome to stay. There are seats reserved for you, but from today forward, things will be different." "Different how?" James asked. "No more lectures, no more eye rolls, no more advice about how to be successful." I straightened my blazer. "From now on, you'll know exactly who I am, and you'll see what I've built. Whether you accept that is up to you." "And if we can't?" Dad asked quietly. "Then you'll be watching from the outside," I replied, "because this is just the beginning. We go global next month, and launch our blockchain division soon after that." Diana appeared once more. "They're ready." As I walked to the door, I paused. "Oh, and James, about your Continental executive credit cards, they'll be deactivated at midnight. You'll be issued a new one, but with a standard employee limit policy." The press conference was a sea of lights and questions. I spoke about the deal, the future of banking, and Shadow's next moves. Our stock price kept climbing. From the front row, my family sat quietly, watching me, maybe truly seeing me for the first time. That night, back in my penthouse, I reviewed the headlines on my tablet when 2 texts came through. "James, I'll take the innovation job. I'm sorry. Dad, we were wrong. Can we have dinner soon?" I smiled. I thought of all those nights I sat at the dinner table, listening to their advice about real careers. Now, they were asking for a seat at mine. My reply was simple. "Sunday, my place, I'll send the car. And James, bring your new card. Dinner's on you." Because sometimes, the best kind of revenge is simply proving yourself right and letting them watch.